know he was looking for her. So, hi everyone, and happy to be here after battling through the traffic. I tried to, my plane wasn't working today, so I had to come by road. And if you live in Port Harcourt, you obviously know what that's like, right? So we live in Lagos and we complain about the traffic. But I can understand if I'm, driving through all that traffic and heading for a meeting where we're going to talk about $1 million, $10 million of Mandela. If you're driving through and at the end of it, what you run into is a market, I kind of think, okay, so it's not Gala that we're looking for, is it? Anyway, I've been here many times. I actually worked here for a while, and it was a great city. I say was because in some ways Port Harcourt is symptomatic of what Nigeria is, and or has become over a period of time. It's a city that's full of energy, lots of young people, lots of promise, stuff inside the ground, a lot of stuff inside the head, a really, really big heart that's been frustrated, I think, by our inability as a country to seize these resources and create an opportunity for them to climb and become what they want to become. Our country, and I think largely my generation, incidentally, I know I was invited because I'm the granddaddy in the group, right? So we have this group called Silicon Africa, and everybody calls me uncle. I don't know why. They call me uncle, and I try not to be upset, But doing things like what you're doing today is actually, to me, one of the most important ways to start to turn this around. We speak often about a wasted generation. That's the one that came before me. Mine is the one that just got lost. We didn't really know what hit us. We couldn't shape an effective response, so what we did was that we left the country. I was thinking back about 10 years ago about a doctor I could go to in Nigeria. And I realized that every single person that I went to university with, not a single one of them is currently practicing in the country. All were abroad. And that makes sense, because if you think you have capacity and you have a dream, you're not going to stay in an environment that's going to kill it. You're going to look for a way to get out. So this gentleman who's currently running the country, he was the guy that came around the time there was this big social campaign around Andrew leaving the country, checking out. There's this thing about checking out of Nigeria. So in the 1980s, we lost essentially an entire generation of our intellectuals. All the people who had been trained in the federal government colleges, in all the best private schools and public schools, then we had very few private schools, came of age in the 1980s. Most had gone through university and graduated and couldn't find a way out. So between 1981 and 1989, we lost the entire topsoil that made up the possibility for Nigeria. And if you're into agriculture, you'll understand that without the topsoil, it's a waste of time, really. And these people went abroad, and thankfully they flourished. I think our big challenge today is, how do we connect to those people and make the most of what they have learned, their experiences, and bring it back here? And without meaning to offend, what he said is true. If you look, and I've asked this question a couple of times on Silicon Africa and a few other fora, if you tally all the successful or potentially successful startups, and you analyze the human capital that sits inside that, you're going to find that the preponderance of the people who started these, who are the founders of these startups, were educated abroad, lived abroad, or had an opportunity to perhaps just go and work abroad for a while and then come back. What does that tell you? Why is it that these guys are the ones who get the money? Why is it that they have what look like breakthrough companies and breakthrough ideas? It all goes back to that topsoil. Because what happened in the 1980s, through the 1980s, without that topsoil, is that a country went into descent, and it descended into mediocrity, and has been in mediocrity for nearly 20 years or 30 years. where standards are set by people who really should be looking up, but instead are looking down. And these people occupy the public sector, they occupy the private sector. They're the bankers in the fancy suits who are the whiz kids. They're the guys sitting in government offices determining policy. And they're the ones that you run into when you make your presentation and they say, well, you know, they start telling you stories about Mark Zuckerberg, who they've never met, and they know nothing about how he even started, right? They're the ones that you see in the newspapers when they take pictures with them, their hands on the computer as though they actually know how to move the mouse, right? The mouse is over here, the hand is here, so you're wondering, okay, what's up here? Right? So these guys are out there, and most of them are from my generation. They're the guys who stayed behind, predominantly. And I know how offensive that sounds, because many of you are children of such people. So it's kind of hard to go home and look at your dad and say, he was talking about you. But certainly, we need to get to the place where we tell ourselves the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And the truth is that for most people in my generation who are successful, the rock stars, it's going to be extremely hard for you to link that rock star status to talent, capacity, and outcomes that are linked to productive venture. Most of the people from my generation who have wealth are people who took it off the top. I'm not talking about kickbacks per se. We're just people who grew up in a system, and the system said, well, this is how it goes, and this is what you have to do to get to the top. And some of us learned fast, and we climbed. Those who didn't stayed behind and grumbled, and you can see them on the streets, you know, still grumbling. And some of them just became average. So this is why we have a country of 178 million people, 126 universities, and a total school enrollment at the university level of 1.4 million. So somebody do the math. What is 1.4 million as a percentage of 178? Anybody? Let's take a wild guess. This is why you're not going to get money if you can't do the numbers. You have to do the numbers in your head. So 178, just approximate it to 200. All right? And then take 1.4 to 1.5 and you can get the numbers. 0.8. So what we're saying is that currently in this country, less than 1% of its population is being trained, is in the process of becoming leaders of the corporate and the private sector. 1%. How's it going to work? You know, in the West, they talk about 99% of the money, 99% of the money being held by 1% of the people. In Nigeria, we don't have any choice because only 1% of our people are in school. We've got 22 million children out of school. 22 million. And we have literacy rate amongst our teachers of something below 25%. And so if you went to university in Nigeria and you went to secondary school in Nigeria, you are the product of a mediocre system. And that is the truth. If you went to school in Nigeria from the 1990s into the present day, you are the product of what is predominantly a mediocre system. And you have to understand that if you want to be different. Because the effort to become excellent actually starts from understanding what you do not have. You must say to yourself, the system is mediocre, but I am not. The system may be aiming low, but I'm aiming high. And when you know the difference, the delta between where the system is and where you want to be, what they're saying to you about yourself and what you're saying to yourself about who you are, you can see the gap that you have to fill. And that's when the real work begins. That's why when we do events like this, we have to do it in a room as small as this, instead of a stadium. It ought to be in a stadium. Because this event is for every single person who has a dream and is nurturing that dream and has the courage to step forward and try to realize it. So where are they? They're hustling on the streets. Instead of here, interacting, networking, learning, and growing. And that's a reflection of exactly the same statistic I gave earlier. We are so few, just like the education system is only producing so few. And it's for the same reason that when you decide you want to launch a startup, everybody says money, money, money. I mean, I was asked to come and talk about early stage funding, right? That's not the problem. The problem is not the money. The problem is not the money. The problem is that there's a lot of mediocrity, chasing after money, from people who are really smart, or who have gone through a really difficult time to make that money, and they're reluctant to give it to you. And to me. And to me, actually, because they don't give me money either, so I must be doing something really wrong. So I think rather than talk about the mechanics of how to access capital, I think the most important thing is how do you prepare yourself for capital? How do you prepare yourself for capital? And it begins with that delta. Recognizing what you don't have. I can't tell you how many times we sit in meetings or discussions with people who are looking for money, looking for mentorship or incubator, access to an incubator and accelerator, and they can't tell you the first thing about the numbers behind the business model. They can't read the balance sheet. Some have never actually developed it. They go to some friend to put together some numbers. Many have not figured out how to make a cogent presentation of their business idea. But you know, if you ask me, the one thing that I find most common among startups, or would-be startups, it's, unfortunately, it's a laziness that is induced by the mediocre system. So I have an idea. What is it? Oh, I want to launch a company that will take over Africa, beginning from Umuahia, Ibegu, and extending into the eastern part of the country. People are looking for this because the businesses are suffering. Okay, so what is the idea? Well, the businesses are suffering. If you go to Umuahia, they are, you know, in fact, my uncles, brothers, sisters, whatever. What is the idea? Oh, okay. I want to build an online ERP. Okay. An online ERP. Okay, why do you want to do an ERP? All the ERPs out there are broken. They're all too expensive. Or they're not named Chinenye and Sons Limited. What is the reason why you want to do an online ERP? I have it in my heart. Okay, keep it there. All right, so it's a great idea. What do we do with it? Who's the competition? They don't know. They can't tell you the competition. Have you ever used an ERP? No. Have you investigated ERPs? No. So why would yours succeed? You know, I have this vision, and I've been trying to do this for 20 years, and I've been, people have been frustrated by lack of money. It's not the answer. So full circle, back to where we started. Getting yourself ready for funding is to get yourself ready actually to start a business. You have to be ready for the business itself before you start looking for the money. And being ready for the business starts with two things from my perspective. When I look at people who want money, or who want mentorship or incubation or whatever, I look at the person closely. And I want to see somebody who, first of all, is articulate about his passion. Really articulate. You must be able to convey to me that you have seen something that you are desperate to bring to life. And convincing me means that you must have thought through all the issues around this particular concept. The second thing that I ask for is I want to see evidence that you've done this before. It doesn't matter whether you run a business. If you set up a social club and taken a membership from 1 to 20, if you've held on to any single venture for 5 years, despite what the market is doing to you, and you're there and it is tenacious and it's keeping itself alive, even as a social club, fantastic. If you're a leader in the church, if you're a leader in your community, if you spend time and connect with your community, I will trust you as somebody who is committed to see this out. You may not have anything else, and I really don't care if it's an online ERP or if it's the new Facebook. Once you have those two, you can be anything that you want to be. The rest of it is just about effort and support, and we can actually provide that. So I had 15 minutes to make a few remarks, and I could go on and on and on. But if I wanted to leave you with any thought, last year we did a second Demo Africa. And Demo Africa is a platform that launches startups, right? When we took on the first one, they said it wouldn't work. We fought Ebola to a standstill with the rest of Nigeria, and we had all kinds of crises, including people who came into Nigeria despite the Ebola, but without visas. And we had to rescue them at the airports and still bring them in to attend the event. And we had a fantastic outing. Second year, what happened? The entries to Demo went from 245 in year 1 to 634 in year 2. And we reduced the number of finalists from 40 in year 1 to 30. And we had a completely immersive and very, very excellent experience. But it told me one thing, which is that the numbers of people who are thinking about the world in which they live and how they can be a part of changing it is very real, it's Pan-African, and it's really, really exciting. But despite Nigeria's dominance, each year we've done 50. Last year we had 65% of the group. This year it dropped to about 50%. But despite that, we still found in the 645 or 634 really horrendous business plans, business models, businesses that really need to die. So I have a really morbid and dark side, obviously, but when I think of what I want to tell you, I want to tell you to look at what it is that you want to start and figure out first and foremost, does it really have a reason for living? If the oxygen in this planet was limited and you had to make a decision as to who's going to get that oxygen, does that business really deserve to live? And if you started it, are you better off not maybe letting it die so you can start something new? Oftentimes people talk about Angry Birds. Everybody knows Angry Birds, right? This company. So Angry Birds is one out of 200 and something games that were built by that company, and it's the only successful one. It wasn't the first. They had over 200 and something games, and then this one just hit it off. Think about all the carcasses of Angry Birds that have died before this one lived. And think about the tenaciousness of the spirit and the entrepreneur that stayed with his idea because he was sure that there was something here. Think of all that pain and think about the success that came eventually. But know that it's not always what you want that has to be. And because you're coming from a deficit, there is an even bigger responsibility for you to really think about what it is that you want to do and honestly say to yourself, this can win and this deserves to live. And once you have that, you will find people who will give you the rest of the support that you want. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.